So, you ever have those things you feel like you really should be doing?
Oh, definitely.
Like maybe finally getting around to that big decluttering project or learning that new skill you bought the course for, but somehow you just, well, don't.
Yeah, and it's easy to kind of beat yourself up about it, right? Thinking it's just a lack of willpower.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what if there's something else at play? Something maybe more fundamental, built into how our brains work.
Well, that's a really interesting way to look at it. It might not be a personal failing at all, but maybe more of a deep-seated efficiency thing.
Efficiency. How so?
We're talking about the law of least effort. It's this idea that, when we're faced with choices that seem pretty similar, we'll naturally drift towards the one that takes the least energy.
Okay, let's unpack that a bit. The law of least effort. So basically, if I've got two ways to do something, and they both get me roughly the same result, my brain's kind of pre-programmed to pick the easier one, one that doesn't require as much mental heavy lifting or, physical effort.
Precisely. It's like an internal energy saving mode. Our brains use a ton of energy, right?
Right.
So they're constantly looking for ways to optimize, to conserve that energy. This leaning towards the easy option isn't really lazy in the way we usually mean it. It's actually, well, a pretty smart biological strategy, efficiency.
Okay, that makes sense. But here's where it gets really fascinating, I think. This isn't just about choosing the elevator over the stairs, is it?
Not at all.
This bias towards the path of least resistance has actually had huge impacts, like historically, on a massive scale.
Absolutely. Understanding this is, I think, kind of the key to figuring out how we can build better habits ourselves, maybe achieve goals with less friction, less internal fighting.
So how does this play out on like a global scale? You mentioned history.
Well, if you zoom way out, you can see this principle shaping things over huge timescales and across entire continents. Think about Jared Diamond's work in Guns, Germs, and Steel.
Oh, right. I remember reading about that. He
Yeah.
talks about the shapes of the continents, doesn't he?
Exactly. Seems like a simple point, right? The Americas and Africa, they're mostly oriented north-south,
Yeah, long and tall.
whereas Europe and Asia, they form this huge landmass that stretches mainly east to west.
Okay, basic geography.
Oh, yeah.
But Diamond connects this to agriculture.
He does. And it's pretty remarkable how that static feature, the shape of the land, could kind of set different parts of the world on really different paths. When farming started taking off, it turned out to be way easier to spread those farming practices along the east-west axis compared to north-south.
Right. Okay, why was east-west easier? Let me guess. Climate.
You got it. If you travel east, say from France towards China, you're staying roughly within the same band of latitude.
So similar sunlight, similar rainfall patterns, seasons, roughly the same growing conditions.
Exactly. So crops that work in one place were, much more likely to work in the next place over. You could take your seeds, your farming knowledge, and just kind of expand eastward into familiar territory.
The friction was low, as you said.
Very low. But now, think about trying to move north or south. Imagine going from, I don't know, Florida up towards Canada.
Whoa, yeah. Totally different worlds, climate-wise.
Radically different. A farmer moving north or south would constantly hit new climate zones. Their existing crops wouldn't work. They'd have to find and domesticate completely new plants.
That sounds incredibly difficult. A massive amount of extra work and uncertainty.
It really was. So it's not surprising that agriculture spread much, much faster along those easier east-west routes in Eurasia.
How much faster are we talking?
The data suggests something like 2 to 3 times faster across Eurasia compared to the Americas.
Wow. 2 to 3 times. That sounds significant.
It might seem like a small difference initially, but over centuries, these advantages really add up. They compound.
Okay, so faster farming spread.
Yeah.
What's the big deal? More food.
More reliable food, yeah, which supports faster population growth, and bigger populations mean.
Bigger armies, more people to invent things, develop new technologies.
Exactly. So that initial ease of spreading agriculture, driven by the path of least resistance expanding where the environment made it easiest, had these huge long-term consequences for how different civilizations developed. It all loops back to that law of least effort. Farmers naturally went where it was easiest.
That's incredible, seeing that principle play out on such a massive historical stage. Okay, so let's bring it back down to us, to our everyday lives. How does this laziness as a smart strategy thing show up in our personal habits?
Well, like the source material says, often our real motivation is to be lazy and to do what is convenient. It sounds a bit blunt, but there's truth there. When we're forming habits, that law of least effort kicks in again. Given similar options, we pick the one needing less energy.
So the key insight is, If our brains are always looking for the easy way, we can kind of use that. Make the good habits the easy ones.
Precisely. We can sort of hack our own tendencies by making the thing we want to do the path of least resistance. Leverage that inherent bias.
It's like that farming example again, right? Expanding east with the same crops, that's easy. Like maybe scrolling on your phone. It's right there. Takes no effort.
Yeah, exactly. That's the expanding east of modern life, maybe. Whereas starting a totally new workout routine, that feels like heading north into a different climate. It feels harder, takes more planning, more energy.
So the action we actually end up doing is often the one that gives us the most, I guess, immediate reward for the least amount of work.
Pretty much. Think about the energy cost. Trying to start with, say, 100 push-ups a day, that's a huge energy demand. You might start strong.
Great, but it's hard to stick with, yeah.
Right. But what about committing to just one push-up a day?
Okay, that feels almost ridiculously easy.
Exactly. The energy cost is minimal. So the chance of that habit actually sticking is way, way higher.
And meanwhile, those super low effort things, checking the phone, email, watching TV, they just eat up so much time because they're so convenient, almost no effort needed.
And another way to think about it is that every habit is kind of an obstacle or maybe a bridge to a desired outcome. Like dieting is the obstacle between you and fitness, perhaps. Meditation is the step towards calm. Journaling towards clearer thinking.
We don't really want the habit itself. We want the result it gets us.
Right. And the harder that habit feels, the bigger the obstacle, the more friction there is between you and that outcome you want.
So the goal becomes making the good habits so easy, so frictionless, that you'll do them even on days when you just don't feel motivated.
Which brings up a good point. If we're all naturally drawn to least effort, how does anyone ever do hard things? Build a business, raise kids, climb mountains. Those take massive effort.
Yeah, exactly. Humans do amazing, difficult things all the time. So how do we overcome this tendency when we need to?
Well, the key thing is that motivation isn't constant, right? It goes up and down.
Totally. Some days you feel like you can conquer the world. Others, not so much.
Right. So on those not so much days, the trick is to have your environment set up to help you out, to minimize the friction as much as possible. If the path is already cleared, your slightly less motivated self is more likely to just follow it.
Ah, so it's less about brute force willpower all the time and more about designing things so your willpower has an easier job when it is needed.
Yeah, think of it like a garden hose. If there's a big kink in it,
Yeah.
you can crank up the water pressure, try to force water through, but it's inefficient, takes a lot of effort.
Right.
The easier way is just to straighten out the kink, right? Let the water flow easily. Relying only on willpower for a hard habit is like forcing water through the bent hose.
That's a great analogy. Okay, so how do we remove the bend for our habits? How do we make things easier?
One of the biggest levers we have is environment design. We talked before about making cues obvious, but you can also physically shape your surroundings to make the actions themselves easier.
Like choosing a gym that's literally on your commute home from work.
Perfect example. That massively reduces the friction compared to a gym you have to go out of your way for. It slots right into your existing routine. Minimal extra effort.
Makes sense. Habits stick better when they fit into the flow of your life.
And this works inside your home or office too. We often try to build habits in environments that are basically fighting against us, like trying to eat healthy when the pantry is full of junk food, or trying to write in a chaotic, messy room.
It's like setting ourselves up to fail. So what's the better way to design these spaces?
Well, you need to actively look for those friction points and just remove them. Think about Japanese manufacturers back in the 70s and lean production.
Oh yeah, Toyota and others.
Right. They obsessed over removing any waste. That included wasted movement. Redesigning workspaces so workers didn't have to twist or turn or reach unnecessarily for tools.
I remember reading about that. It wasn't just about speed, it was about making the work itself smoother, less strenuous for the workers.
Exactly. And the results were huge. I think one source said, American TV service calls were 5 times more common than Japanese ones back then, and U.S. assembly time was way longer. Reducing that friction paid off massively in quality and efficiency.
It's like addition by subtraction, isn't it? Remove the waste, the friction, and you gain. Well, better results, happier customers, more revenue.
That's a great way to put it. And it's the same for us personally. When we consciously remove the things that drain our time and energy, we achieve more with less struggle. Even just tidying your desk helps. It reduces the mental friction, the cognitive load of clutter.
Yeah, that really resonates. And thinking about successful products, they almost all seem to be about removing friction, don't they? Meal kits remove grocery shopping friction.
Dating apps remove the friction of awkward social introductions.
Ride-sharing removes the friction of finding a cab or parking. Texting removes the friction of writing and mailing a letter.
And companies are always trying to make things even easier. Fewer clicks, simpler forms, clearer instructions, fewer choices to overwhelm you.
Like voice assistants. It was already easy to play music on your phone, but just saying, play some jazz, is even easier. It's a constant race to the most effortless solution.
Totally. There's that example with the British government and taxes, just changing from making people download a form to providing a direct link.
Yeah, what happened?
Response rates went up significantly. Just removing that one tiny step, that bit of friction, brought in millions more in tax revenue.
Wow. That's powerful. So that the core idea is design your world so the right thing to do is also the easiest thing to do. It's not just willpower. It's about reducing friction for good habits.
Yeah.
And I guess adding friction for bad ones.
Exactly. And that leads nicely into this idea of priming the environment.
Priming. Okay, what's that about?
It's basically setting up your surroundings in advance to make future actions easier. Kind of like giving yourself a little nudge towards the good stuff before you even have to think about it.
Okay, give me an example. How does priming work in real life?
Well, there's this guy, Oswald Knuckles, and his strategy of resetting the room.
Resetting the room.
Yeah. So like when he finishes watching TV, he puts the remote back exactly where it belongs, fluffs the pillows, folds the blanket. When he gets out of his car, he takes any trash with him immediately. He even wipes down the toilet while the shower's warming up.
Huh. Sounds like just being really tidy, maybe a bit obsessive.
Well, yeah, it keeps things tidy, but the main point isn't just cleanliness. It's about preparing the space for the next action, making it easier to start that next thing. He actually said something like, people think I work hard, but I'm actually really lazy. I'm just proactively lazy. It gives you so much time back.
Proactively lazy. I love that.
Yeah.
So by organizing a space for what it's meant for, you're smoothing the path to actually using it for that purpose.
You got it. My wife does this with greeting cards. She has this box all organized by occasion, birthdays, thank yous, whatever. So when she needs to send a card, bam, she just grabs the right one. Super easy, low friction. Which is probably why she's so good at actually sending them. Me, on the other hand, I think, oh, I should send a card, but then I have to remember to buy one, find an envelope, find a stamp.
And by then, the moment's passed.
Yeah.
Where it feels like too much hassle. Yeah, I know that feeling.
The habit wasn't made easy for me.
Okay, so what are some other ways we can prime our environment for good habits?
It's all about minimizing that first step. Want to cook a healthy breakfast? Put the skillet out the night before. Maybe the cooking spray, plate, utensils, too.
Want to draw more? Leave your sketchbook and pencils out on the desk, not packed away.
Exactly. Want to work out first thing, lay out your clothes, shoes, everything the night before. Want to eat more fruit? Wash it and put it in a bowl right on the counter, ready to grab. Chop veggies and put them in containers at eye level in the fridge.
Making the good choice the path of least resistance. And you mentioned doing the opposite for bad habits, increasing friction.
Absolutely. Same principle, just inverted. Want to watch less TV? Try unplugging it after every use. Then make a rule. You can only plug it back in if you can name the specific show you intend to watch.
Ooh, that little bit of effort forces you to be intentional, not just mindlessly turn it on.
Right. It disrupts the automatic habit. You could even go further, take the batteries out of the remote, or really increase friction. Move the TV into a closet after each use.
Okay, that might be extreme for some, but I see the point. I know for me, just leaving my phone in another room while I'm trying to work makes a huge difference. That little bit of distance stops the mindless checking.
That's a perfect example. That small inconvenience is enough friction. For even more, you could ask a friend or partner to hide your phone for a couple of hours.
Oh, maybe.
But it shows how little friction it can take. Even just hiding the unhealthy snacks at the back of the cupboard, or deleting social media apps off your phone so you have to log in via the browser.
Adds just enough hassle that you might think twice.
Exactly. Now, these little tricks might not cure a serious addiction, obviously, but for those everyday bad habits we just kind of slide into, they can really help nudge us away.
And if you make lots of these small changes, adding friction here, removing it there, you start to really design an environment that supports the person you want to be.
That's the goal. It makes you ask, how can we design our world, our homes, our workplaces, maybe even our communities so that doing what's right, what's important, is also the easiest thing to do?
Making the important things the easiest things. That's powerful.
It really is.
Okay, so just to quickly recap this whole deep dive on the law of least effort, the big takeaway is We're naturally wired to take the easy option, the one requiring the least work.
Yeah, that's the core principle, energy conservation.
And instead of fighting that constantly, we should work with it. Create environments where doing the right thing is just easier.
Right. Reduce the friction for the good habits we want to build, make them effortless.
And, flip side, increase the friction for the bad habits we want to break. Make them harder to do.
And priming the environment, setting things up in advance, helps make those future good actions even easier.
It shifts the focus from pure willpower to smart design.
Exactly. Working smarter, not just harder, on our habits.
So, for everyone listening, maybe think about one area in your life right now where it feels like you're pushing really hard but not getting far, like you're constantly fighting upstream. What's the bend in your hose in that situation? Is there one small thing, one piece of friction you could remove that would make a surprisingly big difference? Make that thing you want to do just a little bit easier.
It's a great question to ponder.
Maybe it's time to try out a little proactive laziness. See if you can design your way to better result.